Thank you for making the journey to Troy and for walking a journey to park your vehicles to join us on our last and final ACIP training of the year. Today we are going to go over the end of the year evaluation phase to help you close out your ACIPs, evaluate your strategies, your initiatives to determine if they've been effective, if they need to change, what needs to take place. And to help us with that, we have our content support team. We have one of the Jeffs in the back with us. Dr. Jeff Langham.
Jeff Langham.
We also have with us Dr. Nicole Reeves. She is an outstanding trainer and she is here to support us through this. We also have our SDE support team. Come on in. We have Ms. Tora Smith and Bessie Morgan. I know I saw Bessie. Oh, there you are. To help us or help you as we complete the activities that go along with completing the evaluation phase. The one thing that we want to ensure is that every ACIP in the state, regardless of your identification, CSI, TSI, Title I, it doesn't matter, you evaluate your plan and you use that information to start the next year's plan. Any questions before we get started? If none, I will turn this show over to Dr. Nicole Reeves.
Thank you, Dana. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Happy end of the school year. How many more days? How many more days? 14. Do I hear a 10? We are getting there, and I know that it was very challenging to probably leave your campuses at this time, but I am so grateful that you are here. How many of you were able to make our opening and our mid-year review sessions? No. Okay. Oh, you did? Okay, perfect. Well, this may or may not make sense, but lucky for you, I am going to review where we've been so far and what needs to happen at the end. Now, I'm sure that when you guys, and it's okay, it won't hurt my feelings if you are this person. When you see Kanye coming, you're like, oh, I don't want them to go. But that's okay. I'm going to tell you, since I was with Fax Casey way back in the day, starting in the late 90s, I started serving on review teams in 96. And this process of continuous improvement, now that we're talking about strategic thinking and planning, if you do it well, everything integrates together and should not be another thing to do. That's the goal. So today, I want you to try and think about how can we integrate what we already do at our school so this isn't just extra. And the evaluating is one of my favorites. Now, I work with school districts and schools all across the country on all kinds of things, but this predominantly. And very often, they would throw off they would say, oh, you don't have to worry about coming to help us evaluate. And I'm like, that's the most important part. Because, again, if you do that one well, then your plan for next year will already be ready. That's the whole plan. So just know that you have several different types of support. So you guys know if you want to use the QR code, but I'm sure you have access to your ALSDE page where you have access to resources on the ACIP, your different diagnostics, your surveys, any recorded webinars we might have done for all of your TOT. And then there's also access to, and I will try and get a QR code for that too, to the ALSDE Federal Programs YouTube channel, where they have recordings if you did not come to any of our sessions at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, then Federal Programs has recorded videos from those sessions. You get to see me again, so you may not go. Everybody got the code? Also, for today's session or any ACIP sessions, we do have, Cognia has a little Alabama support page, so if you wanted to get to any of those resources, you could, and the resources from today. I will put this on during the break again, so you'll be able to grab it then. For those of you, and I think, Jeff, correct me if I'm outside entity. We are not related to any federal or state organization. We are a nonprofit organization. So having someone from the outside coming in to review your data and share that improvement journey with you adds a layer of accountability that gives you an outside perspective. So it's nobody telling you what to do. We give recommendations for improvement, but it's nobody telling you what to do. It's giving you an outside perspective as if a parent or a new teacher were to come in and see something going on in your school. So to help you guys, whenever you do, how many of you have a review coming up next year? Anybody? All right. See these standards right here? When you guys are doing with your self-assessment workbook, these are the standards by doing this work that you are addressing. So you don't have to, you can take the guesswork out. We are addressing these standards and we're going to complete this evaluating phase. So what do we hope to accomplish today? Just take a look for a second. By the end of this 3 hours, we want to show you the theories of action and how to use that to help guide the discussions about your evaluation phase. We want to analyze any key measure data. If you don't have any, hopefully you guys do have access to some of your data somewhere. Although I don't know if you can get online. How many of you, was anybody able to get online while you were here without your hotspot? You were? How did you do it?
I don't know.
I did that and nothing came up. I stood on my head, I did all kinds of things. Okay, I'm using my hotspot. All right. Well, if you have a dashboard for your school or your system, or you have access, we're going to ask that you get somebody from your table, even if you don't. If somebody at your table has access to some kind of data, we're going to model for you one, and we want you to do one today so that you can see how this kind of works. And then we are going to talk about summarizing that for your governing agencies so they know what you've accomplished on your ACIPs and then how they can inform your next year's ACIP. So let's review where we've been thus far. When you are preparing your ACIPs, now we've been probably doing this over 5 years. So if you've been in your position for 5 years or more, anybody? Okay, so this is a great time to do this. The envisioning phase, let me just tell you this. The first one, the sub-phase, determine your current reality. You do that every single year. This is not Cognia, this is the world. Your ESA needs information, the state needs information, and the federal government needs information. So you're constantly collecting data and you're reporting on that data. Now, one of the things that I found when I would evaluate schools and work on their accreditation teams or diagnostic review teams was everybody was collecting it. Everybody was reporting on it. But very few people actually used what they had to inform decisions. That's something that we're going to talk about a little bit more. The Explore the Future is only something you need to do once every 3 to 5 years. Let me say that again. You want to explore the future once every 3 to 5 years. So if none of you have been in your positions for more than 5 years, guess what it's a good time to do? That. Why would we do that? When you gather your survey data, when you gather our perception data, your TOT, your Elliott, your student performance, your attendance, your graduation rate, what happens after you collect it? When did all of that happen? Before you collected it. So now that you've collected it, guess what? It's past data. So we say current reality because that's the most current we have. But when you explore the future, you're not just trying to shovel dirt out of one hole to put in another one to build up like student gaps. That's not going to help you. You want to look at future trends. What are the things that are affecting your schools and your institutions, whatever role, from whatever role you're working in, how is economics playing a factor? How are political future trends? Okay, just let's look at the last election. What does the current federal government want to do? Downsize federal funding. Well, they're not going to downsize the federal funding. Who do they want to give the power to? The systems in the states. But they don't want a whole Department of Education at the federal government. Until the 70s, we didn't have them. The states took care of their own system. So whether you agree or not, is that going to affect the way you operate in schools? 100%. We can't wait for that to happen. That's a future trend that's coming right now that you have to kind of be prepared for. And that's okay. The funding is still going to happen. The funding is going to happen for IDEA. It's going to happen for your students with special needs, your ELLs. It's going to happen for that. But who orchestrates how that's spent is going to probably change. So economically, politically, socially, what are your students, what are the future trends coming down the pipeline now? How many of you have increased, I was just reading an article, increased needs for counseling at your schools? It's crazy. And what contributed to it? People are going to say, oh, it's that social media. Well, maybe, but the way we interact socially has forever and ever and ever and ever been changed. Unless you're from a small community like me and nobody knows that the internet exists. So they just have coffee on their front porches. I love it. And I love it. But for the rest of the world, the way students interact, the way families interact is different. So we have to look at what those future trends are socially. And last but not least, technologically. Guys, everybody is scrambling, and there's two letters that are wreaking havoc on education today. Who knows what they are? A, flippin' I. Let's say it like that. There's two letters. But you know what? AI's been around for a hot minute. If we had taken the time to explore the future, we would be much more prepared for what that would look like in our schools. And it's helpful, and it's convenient. And all of the systems, that your assessment systems, those software programs that analyze the student performance data, that's AI. How many of you remember actually using spreadsheets? I do. We had to use spreadsheets of student performance and see what the mean, median, and the mode was. That's nuts. We don't do that anymore. So it can be helpful, but it can also be like, what do we do with this? So determine your current reality. How often? Every year. And during the year. And every day, probably. Explore the future. How often? Every 3 to 5 years. So if you have a 3-year plan, we used to always, there was a time when we did a 10-year plan. What kind of logic was that? I'm not sure. Because there's a lot of changes that happen in 10 years, yes? There's a lot of changes that happen in 5 years. When I left as principal, I was like, we're not doing the 5-year plan, we're doing the 3-year plan. Because the teachers I have today will not be the teachers I'll have in 3 years. I was able to stop that to a degree, not to let you go, but the people started to stay when we got close to that. So a 3 to 5 year plan is what you want to do. So if you know that this is where attendance is, graduation rate, student performance, perception data, this is your current reality, and you looked at future trends, and you've prioritized what you want to address in the future, it is there when you start to synthesize where are we now and where do we want to go, that your strategic themes should rise to the surface. Let me say that again. Your current reality and where you want to be in the future, those are the gaps that are going to define your strategic plan. Because I will tell you, all of you will always have a student performance improvement theme, correct? You always will have. That's what we do as educators. So realized before they could even address student performance, their organizational effectiveness and the culture of their school was so bad that if they didn't address some of those things, the students weren't going to ever improve. Now, that did not mean that they weren't analyzing student scores, that they weren't observing teachers and trying to improve the instructional environment for the students so that they could perform more or better. That just meant on a strategic plan, they were going to address all those external factors that were obstacles to what was happening in the classroom. They could not keep teachers, they could not keep principals. There was, in like a 4-year period, they had 5 different principals. Nothing was happening, nothing. So student performance wasn't going to improve, and the teacher turnover rate was even more awful. And this was one particular school in the school district, and in the school district, the school board was fighting in and among itself. And the community had factions. Does that sound familiar? It's the nature of the beast. So when you are making your strategic plans, understand that you want to address those biggest needs to help you reach your future priorities. That doesn't mean all the other stuff doesn't get done. Teachers will continue to teach. You will continue to assess student performance, whether it's attendance, behavior, discipline, or academics. So that's envisioning. Any questions on envisioning? Let me just kind of give you a quick little exercise. If you decide that your district or your school is going to explore the future, it's very easy. You look up future educational trends, future political trends, and you'll get all these websites, future economic trends for your area. You'll even know, I'm finding out, and I'm from Louisiana, I know I didn't say that, I'm finding out that we have a new governor and he opened our infrastructure, which I never knew what that word meant. But anyway, we now have a avenue for big plants to come in and build things in our state. So we have 3 new plants that are opening around our state. That would be huge for the areas where that's opening because the schools could tap into that relationship. So that's one of the things you want to look at. So what are your future economic trends, your future social trends? When you look them all up, you are going to be surprised at what's happening. Doing this exercise with one of the districts, this is just really cool for me. They have a CTAE program, don't we all, right? So they have a CTAE program, and when they did future trends, they realized how Facebook or online shopping through social media was changing the advertising industry completely. They are not even, there's no longer marketing departments for a lot of these companies. So ladies especially, when you click on, you know how they have somebody who's doing a, this is what it looks like, they're going to open their package, this is what it looks like, this is how it feels, they do all of this. They don't pay them. They don't pay them. And they're advertising for that company, and that company's getting money because people are like, oh, I want it to fit like that on me. Guys, the same thing is happening with all of the, whether it's hunting supplies, whether it's boating, whether it's cars. For my husband, it's like the health stuff because he loves all the exercise, supplements, and all that. And I get more Amazon packages from him than he gets from me. In fact, I'm hardly ever get any. Every day there's packages. I'm like, it works for him. It drives me nuts, but it works for him. That school district decided we're going to include that marketing thoughts and exploration in our CTEAE program, using social media to push something. And they have now a whole following in addition to, why would they do that? Because what do you know about many people who start their online business after COVID? I don't know about you, but I have several friends who left their corporate jobs and now have an online business and are doing just fine. So they want those students to have that avenue because they don't have economic situation in their area. They don't have economic opportunities. So that is how powerful exploring the future can be. Once you know what your strategic areas of focus are going to be, it's time to make a long-range plan. If you are doing ACIP year to year to year to year, stop. Create a 3 to 5 year strategic plan.
We don't have to do it every year?
You have to do it every year, but you can select from the critical initiatives you already need.
Oh, well, I read that.
Exactly. We want to make your work efficient. When you plan 3 to 5 years in advance, there's no way you're going to get all of the work you are going to identify you need to do. And we do this all the time. We are overzealous on our annual improvement plans, and we get nothing done because we're so scattered. If you can focus, so now you have, let's say you have, and I love these numbers, 3 to 5, because I will forever be 35. 3 to 5 strategic themes, not more than that. Do not have 6 or 7, that's too many. 3 to 5, student performance. Another one, instructional capacity. Another one, organizational effectiveness. Another one, climate culture. Whatever it comes up for you. Within each of those, you're going to have 3 to 5 critical initiatives. And those critical initiatives, and we're going to show you what they can look like in just a minute. Those critical initiatives have to have an intended outcome. How many of you have on a current ACIP that you look at have something like provide professional learning to instructional staff? Anybody have that on their ACIP? Okay. Can you provide evidence that you do it? All day, every day. Can you provide evidence that it actually made a change? Maybe. But you have to articulate what your intended outcome is. This is where plans fail all the time, in my opinion. I can prove I've offered professional learning. I can prove it every day. But that's not the end goal. When you actually articulate your intended outcome is to improve instruction or student engagement. You measure that. You measure the instruction, the improved instruction, using, you have a tool now. What's your tool? Your ATOT, or student engagement, which can be Elliott, student engagement surveys, observation, whatever. You can prove that what you spent money on in professional learning actually made a change. So for all of your critical initiatives, you're going to identify some things. You're going to say what you're going to do, what is the outcome, and how will we measure it. That's the most important things. And you'll see an example when we go through the model. But you don't do. So if I just listed 4 strategic themes and each one has 3 critical initiatives, how many critical initiatives are there? Say again?
4 with 3 is 12.
12. Are you going to do 12 critical initiatives in 1 year? Please don't. Please don't. But that's your long-range plan. That's your strategy map for 3 to 5 years. So when you start to do your ACIP, you don't have to go back to the drawing board, ever. You go, oh, I've got 12 to choose from. In year 1, this is what we need to do first. And you pick your 4 or whatever, how many. And that becomes your ACIP for year 2. You're going to see today, when you finish your ACIP, you've got a whole bunch of critical initiatives just waiting for you to address. You don't have to go back to the drawing board. And your new data is your new current reality, so you shouldn't even have to evaluate it again. Analyze it again, because you just did to evaluate this year's plan. So it becomes a cycle. We evaluate this year, and and then we have some ready to put on our ACIP for next year, depending on how we do. That's planning. Once you decide which ones you're going to address each year, you go into implementation. That's where you get into the nitty-gritty. So if I'm going to address 4, I'm going to find the persons responsible, the funding sources needed. This is where your federal dollars come in, your program data, all that other kind of stuff. Who's responsible? Timelines. If you don't have timelines on there, you already have an established timeline according to ALSDE. Does anybody know what it is? When are your plans due? October. Should they be done before October? Please do them before October. You do not start the year without a plan, but some people do. Have a plan, make your tweaks so that by October, everything is kind of already set. And you can get approval from your ESAs prior to October 15th. So, unless there's a situation where you have a principal who has to start September 1st, you should all have a plan ready to go before school starts. So, your timelines are October 15th. When's your next thing due? Your mid-year review. When is that due? January through March-ish? Okay. Now you have your time. Your timeline's already established. You don't even have to do one. And then you evaluate at the end of the year to get ready for your new one. You guys are ahead of the game. You're here today. Hopefully you will take what you have today and you'll be able to have your evaluation done by June, and you already know what needs to be on the table also by June for next year. That's our plan. And the enact and monitor progress should be at least 3 times a year, but I prefer, if it were me, and it was me at one time, I would do at the end of the first quarter, at the end of the second quarter, at the end of the third quarter, and then I would evaluate at the end of the fourth quarter. And that way, and I'll tell you how I learned that the hard way. We had to turn in our improvement plans, our annual improvement plans. I was a new principal. You know, life happens, you get busy, and then you get the email from your ESA that says, oh, your evaluation of your plan is due next week, and you're like, ugh. And you go back and you're calling your leadership team, did we do this? What did we do about that? Did we even address this? And you're trying to remember. If you do it quarterly, you keep people on their toes, and you already know what you've tried and what you've adjusted, so that it's just a matter of doing a summary. When I made that change, our evaluation part of this was less than half a day. Pulled the leadership team together, they all brought their data they were responsible for, we analyzed it, and we made our new goals for the next year. Learned it the hard way. But then we have to evaluate. Yes?
Could you go just a little bit more into, on mid-year evaluation or mid-year review, how you handle that? Do you go back in, do you adjust, do you change the actual plan?
You try not to change the plan, but when you have a strategy map, you have your long-range vision, so you know where you want to be in the long haul. Inevitably, and this is where we get into some sticky places with school boards. School boards want to know every little minute detail, so they want to know the details of the implementation plan. When I'm working with the district, I tell the board, sorry, you're overstepping. Because when you get into the nitty-gritty, inevitably you have to do some twists and some turns. So yes, you have to adjust it. There are teachers, this is the example I'll often give, when they go in a classroom, they have this great lesson plan, but it's still not resounding with the students. And they're like, by golly, I planned it, we're gonna do it, instead of pivoting and engaging the students. At the mid-year review, you have the autonomy to do that. But be careful. If you said your critical initiative is still kind of a high level, I'm going to provide professional learning for teachers. Don't throw it out the window. What will probably change is how you facilitate that. So for example, you're out of money. There's no more Title II available to you. I still want to provide professional learning. I can do a million different things. I can do an online course, I can do PLCs, internal, I can have them read a book or view some instructional strategies of teachers if that's what I'm trying to do. So I can change the way I'm doing it, not necessarily what I'm doing. Unless it no longer has relevance, then yes, change that. So, long and short, yes, but with intention. Not just because you didn't do it, or because you didn't want to. Because if it was identified as a need, then it probably needs to be done. Does that make sense? Perfect. Any other questions? Notice this quote. Sometimes education gets a bad rap. Not even sometimes. A lot of times education gets a bad rap. I have yet to meet an educator that isn't putting heart and soul into everything they have. I've met two. And one of them was when I was a principal and they was no longer an educator. But for the most part, I don't see that. I see people who show up every day because they want to make a difference for students. And so we have good intent. Where we fall short is we don't stop to reflect and think if we've actually made a difference. Second grade teacher, when I was a principal, I noticed that third grade teachers, it was a revolving door. The survey results were the worst with the third grade teachers. I was like, what is happening? I found out through much research that the second grade teacher, because we only had, in this little rural school, there was only one teacher going up. We ended up with two. But she taught and retaught and retaught and retaught and retaught and retaught until all the students made all A's. Their performance on standardized tests did not change from second grade to third grade. There was no change in student performance. The parents didn't give a flip about their summative assessments. They cared when their students didn't come home with all A's. And it took me a long time to figure that out. I was like, what is happening? Why are these third grade teachers quitting? And they're quitting because the parents were giving them so much grief because you can't teach. You're not like Miss So-and-so. You don't know what you're doing. I'm like, okay. So I finally, we had to, was that wrong of that teacher to do it? There was no ill intent, but her results were not the intended outcome. So we have to stop doing things because we have good intentions. We have to do things and say, we got this far. And if you just took one step forward, you tell your people, we got one step closer. Oh, I thought you were going to ask a question. This brings us to where we are now. How many, can any of you, I want you to think, and if you have to go back and look at your ACIP, how many critical initiatives do you have on your ACIP for this year to evaluate? I'm giving you about 5 minutes to think, look, and discuss. How many critical initiatives do you have? Not right now. All right, anybody know? How many critical initiatives do you have? You have 8? Okay. Ambitious, very ambitious. 8 critical initiatives here, 13. 6. Anybody else? 7. 4. Ooh, I'm liking the 4 over there. I'm liking 6. How, and just without even evaluating, how do you feel like you're doing on those? Okay? All right, just making sure. All right, so if you know how many critical initiatives, let me just tell you this. To evaluate, you will evaluate every single critical initiative. So you have to evaluate 8. You have to evaluate 13. You have 4. You have 7. You have 8. 6. So you have to evaluate each one. And we're going to do that today. We're going to show you how to do it. But then, are you ready for this? This is not a test. Let's say you had 10. And you accomplished, you reached your intended outcome for 3 of them. Write that down. So you have 10. You successfully reached your intended outcome for 3. You got closer for 2. You had to change 2. And the last 3 you didn't get to. This is not a test. If it were a test, what would your percentage be on that? You accomplished 3, and you partially accomplished 2. 40%. What does that tell you? 60% was not completed, so you feel like a failure. This is not a test. If you successfully accomplished 3, woohoo! You tell people, we got this, we shipped that, we're good. 2, we got closer on 2 more. We had to change 2 because we had 2 new principals throughout the course of the year. And there were 3 that we didn't get to because our funding didn't come through. That's not a failure. You just tell the people what happened. And you tell them why. Now, if those 3 that you didn't even get to were because you just didn't feel like getting to them, then yes, probably, I won't say fail, I'll say oversight. But you don't want anything to fall through the cracks. So you're going to evaluate each one. So when you get to the judge success of the overall plan, there's no judgment. There is a statement of what you accomplished or didn't, and why or why not. It's a summary. And you can be, I have actually seen a school that said, we were very ambitious with our plans, so much so that we only accomplished X. And I was like, well, I don't know if I would have worded it that way, but they had such a strong culture that people were like, you're being honest. We're fair, we're good. I was like, all right. I would have been like, we accomplished 3. And we have more work to do. That's what I would have said. But, you know, I'm patty positive. So now, if that's the case, if you had 10, you accomplished 3, partially accomplished 2, what are you going to do with those 2? Keep them on the books for next year. You had to change 2. You're going to keep those on the books for next year because you changed them midway. And the 3 you didn't get to, they may not be relevant, or it might still need to be a pause. Or you carry those over to the next year. Now you've got 8 for next year. Did you have to think about that? No. Your ACIP has just written itself. And you already have the intended outcome. You already have the key measure. You just make adjustments because you did that on the front end. That's how the evaluating phase works. And apparently my computer went to sleep. Any questions? Now, if you're like me, you want to check the boxes so bad. You want them to be all accomplished. Let's look. We're going to talk about how using, if you put this work in the platform, which you should have done, you can use one of the outputs. You guys are going to be my leadership team today. It's an awfully large one, but you're going to be my leadership team today. And we're going to use our theory of action to help us evaluate. You ready? The theory of action says, we think that if we do this, we're going to reach this outcome. That's all it is. So let's look. And I know you can't read it, but I'm going to tell you. Just looking at this, notice what's on the top and bottom. What is it? The top and bottom of this output. The mission and vision. You don't even have to read it. Every single thing you do should be within your purpose statements. If you choose a critical initiative that's not, don't do it. You're wasting your time. You're losing your focus. So, what is your vision for the long term and your mission of how you're going to get there? And all the work you do should be right in there. Then you've got a rectangle right in the center that's highlighting a critical initiative. Now, because if you can see this, you are impressive. but I'm going to read it to you. You ready? This is my example. Provide professional development in personalized learning. That's what we said. You remember, leadership team? That's what we said we were going to do. Now I want you to go down 2 lines. This is our intended outcome. You ready? All staff will gain the knowledge necessary to transition to personalized learning. That's what we said we were going to accomplish. Now I want you to stay right there. All staff will gain the knowledge necessary to transition to personalized instruction. All right. Our key measures were, you guys, teacher survey. Our key measures were classroom observation. So TOT or Elliott, either one. And our last one, we had three ways we were going to measure, was teacher evaluation. So I'm going to say Elliott and TOT. Okay, so my leadership team, just make it up. What did the teacher survey say? Make something up. We wanted them to gain the knowledge necessary to transition into professional learning. So we gave them professional learning, and we gave them a survey. We're probably trying to ask them, do you have the knowledge? So just make up some survey data. Make up some TOT data, Elliott, and make up some TOT. Just make it up. Okay. 60% of teachers said what?
They feel confident in providing.
They feel confident. Is that good? Me? Okay. Let me show you how progress monitoring can help that. If we offered this professional learning in the fall, and we evaluated, we gave them the survey then, and 60% felt confident, would we leave it right there? Oh, heck no. Because then you're not going to have a successful evaluation. But you knew early on, 60% of them, so you might do some PLCs, you might do some follow-up support with your instructional coaches. You might do something that's not extra, but it provides focus to the people who are responsible for making it happen. So who's responsible for quality instruction? The teacher and their support, whatever that looks like at your school. So instead of having a new initiative, although sometimes the ESAs tell the instructional coaches what to do, you tell your instructional coaches, only 60% got it. You better offer some support and help them understand what that should look like, what it should be like. See what I'm saying? Okay, so that's teacher survey data. So let's say now at the end of the year we give them a new survey. They got support. If we move to 80% of teachers feel comfortable, did we reach our intended outcome? Where we said all teachers. We didn't, but we could say it's the end of the year. We can say 80% of our teachers feel confident, and we will provide support for the other teachers until all feel confident. That's all you have to say. All right? What about my Elliott folks? I think it is on, help me out, Jeff. Where is the personalized instruction? Is it A4? There's equitable learning, there's engaged learning, and they both have pieces about, in the Elliott, about personalized.
Maybe the implementation of tiered instruction.
Okay, the implementation of tiered instruction. So if you see that in the classroom, you report on that. If your Elliott scores show that all the students' learning needs are met, we're good. It's that easy. Did we reach our intended outcome, and what evidence shows we got there? And if we listed teacher surveys, if we listed Elliott, if we listed TOT, so if we're using the TOT, you can say all teachers, our rating on the TOT for these domains are blah, 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 blah. That's how you evaluate that critical initiative. Any questions? When you get to the third phase, look at the bottom. The third subphase, the second one, where you judge the overall success of the plan. On this critical initiative, it says provide more active, personalized learning opportunities to support student readiness. That was our big objective. Did we get closer to that objective? Yes. And you say that. That's all this is. This theory of action, if I had it, if I knew about it when I was a principal, I would have been way more efficient. I would have focused the conversation where it needed to stay focused. Because sometimes you're like, oh, so-and-so didn't even show up for that professional learning. Or, and you might go to all these other reasons why you weren't successful. Just tell me what the data says. Stay there. Stay here. Is that what Will Smith says on him? Stay right here. All right. Subphase 1. These are all the activities that you do. You look at each critical initiative and you have these questions and conversations. What issues or conditions were problematic? This helps guide, it's like a guided reflection. What, if anything, has changed? Do the outcome data indicate success? Was the proposed solution executed as planned? That's where your changes came in. No, it wasn't executed as planned because we had no money. So we did it with PLCs and book studies. Are there other explanations that might explain the results? Sometimes, and I will tell you this, when you have very focused work, you get more benefit than you expected. And that happens more often than you think. When you are much more focused, your staff knows it, and everybody knows their expectations. So there's all kinds of things that can happen. So you might have said the personalized instruction, the teachers feel more comfortable, classroom observations show it, but it might also show up where else? In attendance, test scores, minimize discipline issues. It might show up with measures that you didn't plan. Those are so much fun to realize. You know what? Because you have addressed an external factor that is affecting the student's ability to learn. That's why we have the LEA. That's why we have the TOT, to help leaders have some tool to give them an indication of those things that are happening. That's why we do strategic thinking and planning. Because the culture of a school can make or break student performance. Parent involvement can make or break student engagement. So we look at all of those factors. So let's kind of take a step back and remember our steps for data analysis. This is in your self-assessment, by the way, for accreditation. But it permeates all the work you do. So if you understand it here, when you do get to your accreditation, it's going to make sense for that as well. You have copious amounts of data. Who agrees? Too much. Data's a four-letter word. It is a lot. But if you don't make connections with the multiple forms of data, that's how I uncovered the third grade problem. The first thing I looked at, I was like, why do I get new teachers every year and sometimes mid-year? So I looked at the student survey data, and they had something to say about their teaching. I looked, but it was not bad. I looked at parent survey data, and I was like, ew, they unhappy. We've got a problem. I looked at student performance data, no change from second to third grade, despite all of her reteaching. I looked at the curriculum data. Well, that was one of the things that I fixed. Every grade level was allowed to choose whatever textbook they wanted to use. What is the problem with that? Inconsistency in instruction. So you get all these new teachers and they're just, oh, I'm going to teach this instead of this. And then they got this in first grade and then they're going to get that in second and fourth grade. So it was a nightmare. So I fixed that. Didn't help. I had to go through all of these layers to uncover. So you have all these multiple sources of data until I realized that the perception data and the behaviors of the parents towards the teachers and what was happening in second grade were all factors contributing to this phenomenon. If you see a deficit, and you always start with student performance, it's easier. You see a deficit in 7th grade math. You start to look at your other data sources that might explain why. What's happening in those classrooms? What are the discipline issues? I can tell you right now, and we have the benefit of looking at our entire organization around the world. When you give those student engagement surveys, none of you are going to be shocked by this. If you are, I'll be surprised. Engagement is high in elementary. Engagement goes down in middle school. Engagement goes way down in high school. That, not performance, engagement. So, if you notice that 7th grade math is a problem, look at engagement. Look at the teacher capacity. Don't blame the teacher. Give the teacher the support needed to help better engage the student. So that's your data, you analyze it. Good, bad, high or low. Tell me good or bad. High chronic absentees. Bad. High graduation rate. Minimal out-of-school suspensions. So low does not always equate to good or bad, So you have your data, you analyze all of it, and just do a summary. What was good, what was bad? Don't make an interpretation. We're not there yet. High, low, good or bad. Got it. So when we're using this theory of action and those teachers, so if I have this committee responsible for that critical initiative, you would already come to the table for evaluation. You already analyzed the survey data. High, low, good, bad. What was it? Observation data. High, low, good, bad. What was it? Teacher observation tool. High, low, good, bad. What was it? You already know what it is, and then you bring that to the table, okay? Then you have that discussion, and you say, well, the teachers say they are, but our student surveys, which wasn't on here, but our students say, I did not get my needs met. That doesn't mean one's right and the other's wrong. There's a difference in perception. So you have a discussion because that pulls the information when you start to look at multiple sources of data. So if you have 3 different groups, parents, teachers, and students, that's 3 separate data sources. And you start to get information about why certain things are. So the students can say it, but your observation data say, yes, those teachers are personalizing. The teachers feel like they're personalizing. Everything is good, but we have to make sure that the students understand what is happening for them. Then that gives you that's your synthesis. When you look at multiple sources of data, you have enough information, you're synthesizing multiple sources, and you have findings. So on that one, if we had 80% classroom observation tool, teacher observation tool said, yes, everybody was personalized learning. What does that mean? That's our evidence that we have met although not all teachers, we have gotten close. So what are we probably going to do with that critical initiative? We might carry it over one more year and really hone in on those skills. And don't introduce something new for teachers for professional development. Let them keep working on that one. I did work with a school. They had a plan. She kept it up for 3 years. First year was trial and error, discussion, reflection. Second year was implementation with support. Third year, she's like, you know what to do. Make it happen. And those scores went up. But she kept it for 3 years instead of doing a new initiative every year. All right, any questions on the data analysis? Very quickly, understand the purpose of your analysis. That is why the theory of action is so critical. It is so critical. Your purpose is that intended outcome. That's your purpose for analyzing the data. What were you trying to accomplish? So know the purpose. You already selected your data, you identified it because it was a key measure. You analyzed it and evaluated it. You clean it. Let me just say this. This cleaning is more important when you are doing the envisioning phase, because you've got, remember, it's a copious amounts of data. And you can drown in it if you're not careful. Just because you have to report something to the state or the federal government does not make it strategic plan worthy. Let me say that again. Just because you report it doesn't make it strategic plan worthy. I'll give you an instance. If your demographic data is 99% one race or ethnicity, you have to report it. You don't have minorities. You have different learning needs. But that doesn't mean if you, and I'm just using that one because that's easy. If your whole population is this one community and they're all the same and everything's the same, you're going to address their learning needs. There's not a need for a whole, we have to do this culture, we have to make sure, because unless your teachers are a different race. Because if you have to do professional learning for your teachers, it helps them understand. It's just an example, it's not the best example. But you clean it. If you don't need to use it, if it's not presenting a problem, remove it from your analysis list. Do you see what I'm saying? You have all certified teachers. You report on that every year. Do you have to do anything with it? No. It doesn't need to make it to the strategic plan. Then you analyze and synthesize and you interpret. All right. Oh, I forgot to, I don't think I changed this. Don't worry about the QR code yet. Don't worry about it. I think that takes you, your Padlet, those templates are going to be on the Padlet, and I think I forgot to make sure that this QR code was on that Padlet. But I have templates for you, and I think they're on your table. So we're going to take a little break, and we're going to go through this together. We're going to model one, and we're going to go through this together. So it's 9:30. Yeah, how much time do you need? 10 minutes? Okay. We'll do 10 minutes and we'll come back and we'll work on it. Any questions? And if you, at this point, I'm going to try to get back on the internet, and you guys might want to try this thing. Because if you have data on a dashboard, you'll need to access it. All right. If you guys can make your way back. I want you to think back. I want you to think back to our model example of personalized learning, professional development, and personalized learning. Who remembers what the intended outcome was? Not verbatim. That all teachers would gain the knowledge necessary to implement personalized learning, right? In our ACIP, we said classroom observations were going to be one measure. We said classroom observations would be one measure. So if you think about personalized learning, A, environment A, equitable. Environment B, especially 1 and 5, the indicators, the first and the fifth indicator. And environment E, progress monitoring, have the elements and the indicators that you often find in personalized learning. So let's go a step further. Let's look at A. I'm coming to the table as the leadership team that I'm bringing this classroom observation data. What do I notice about engaging in differentiated learning opportunities, which is an element of personalized learning? This is 1 to 4, right? How am I doing on that one? What about learners have equal access? I'm okay. I mean, I'm not perfect, but you know, our school, I'm talking about, say, learners are treated in a fair, consistent manner. That's not my challenge point, is it? But then I look at the bottom, and they have opportunities to develop empathy, respect differences for aptitudes, backgrounds, cultures, blah, blah, blah. Right? So I'm not helping them be their personal selves, right? And I'm not differentiating instruction. So according to this, according to this data, do I have solid evidence so far? I've got mixed results. Let's look at B, at high expectations, specifically 1 and 5. If learners have personalized learning, then they know the expectations they need to meet. I'm okay. I got work to do. I look at 5. If they are taking responsibility and self-directed, that's an element of personalized learning. I'm okay. And then last but not least, I go to E, where they're monitoring their progress, receiving feedback too, and this is critical. If they receive the right kind of feedback to adjust their work, if they understand or verbalize understanding of the content, and if they can explain how their work is assessed. Looking at this, I already said, because of the survey data, 80% of the teachers feel confident, but the classroom observation data not only tells me that I still have work to do, it tells me where the work needs to happen for next year. I'm going to work on differentiation. I'm going to work on taking responsibility and monitoring progress. That's going to be part of my action steps for next year's ACIP. I don't have to go back to reinvent the wheel. I'm using the data to inform my next steps. Make sense? If I need further professional learning, if I want to keep that critical initiative the way it's written, then my professional learning might focus on differentiation or allowing students to do this or any number of those things. That's how I would analyze one critical initiative. I looked at the teacher survey data, I looked at the observation data, and that's where we were. So, how many of you can access some of your school or system data right now? All right, if there's one person at a table, if you don't mind sharing what it is, what I want to do is I want to take this page, right behind it, we are going to do a model together. And on the Padlet that, I forgot to put it up during the break, I'll put it up while you guys are working. On the Padlet, I have these templates for you, so you can type in them and not have to write on them. But whoever has access to data at your table, we'll take one volunteer. If you go into your ACIP and you say, this was our critical initiative, and then you can share the data with your folks, if it was survey data or observation data. Notice the third column. If you have pre and post, that would be great. So if you have your Elliott data from the beginning of the year, and you have another round later, that would be awesome. If you have survey data from last year, and new survey data, that would be awesome. You probably don't have your student performance data from this year. Do you have your interim, your benchmarks? So if you have your benchmark data, you can use that. And it just, you work across. The degree to which you achieved your intended outcome, was it implemented with fidelity? So if you guys were using your example, was it implemented with fidelity? Not as a fault of you, yeah, not as a fault of you, but you know that not all of you were implemented with fidelity. So I want you to just pick one critical initiative at your table and share. So y'all can just kind of walk through determine the critical initiatives, the impact. And if you are with ALSDE and Justice for that, if you want to walk around, we'll come and help you. Guide that process. Oh, let me put here's your Padlet link. All right. So you picked one critical initiative. How did you guys do over here? Just pick one. And if you pull up the theory of action, I'm going to show you how to pull up that theory of action. Because you guys don't ever have to, you don't probably use that very often. If you are in the strategies module, you log in to My Journey. And somebody asked a question earlier, if you made changes at your mid-year review, or if you conducted your mid-year review, do you have to submit anything? I don't think you have. Every ESA does it differently. You don't have to submit, but there is a place in your strategies where you can say if you're on track, lagging, or at risk, and you can just put a comment. Some people, when we did our mid-year review work around the state, some people have paperwork that they use and they keep on file for their leaders. That's fine. These are tools. All of them are tools. They don't do the work for you. So I'm going to, let me just use, this one's 2022, but just for fun, we're going to do this one. So when I open this plan, I find my plan. Notice on the left-hand side, I've got a navigation pane. It's time for evaluating. I want to determine the impact of each critical initiative, but I want to use my theory of action to guide the conversation. See this output right here? I click on output. I have 4 different outputs: a strategy map, an improvement plan, an implementation plan, that's your ACIP, or a theory of action. Once I click on theory of action, I'm going to select, if it stops thinking, I'm going to select one of my critical initiative. Here was the professional learning one. So this keeps me focused. I'm going to see if I can make it bigger. Oh, no. Okay. Notice on my title, it says Title II funding. I even know what resources. Did I use all of my money? I can even do all that. But the critical initiative is in the center. Provide professional development for personalized learning. I go straight to my intended outcome, and I've updated it since then, so excuse. This one says teachers easily implement personalized learning strategies throughout the lesson. So I'm going to look at teacher inventory, student inventories, and student engagement surveys. Mine changed a little bit, sorry. So somebody who has teacher inventories, what does the data say? It's going to look like the Elliott. It's going to say what the students thought, what everybody else thought. What did the student inventory say? What did the student engagement survey say? That's what I use. If we were successful, if I can say that the majority of the teachers are implementing strategies for personalized learning, I call it a win. What's my next column? My pre-data. Notice the next column says, what was my key measure data? Pre and post. So when I made this part of my ACIP, I probably conducted surveys from last year or from the beginning of the year, or the inventories, I'm sorry, the inventories. And then at the end of the year, I give them again. Do I see a change? If it's a positive change, what's the next thing on the page? After you do your pre and your post data, you can even have your leadership team come with that full. What was it at the beginning if it's student performance? What was it at the beginning? What was it at the end? And beginning might be last year's data compared to this year's. The next one says the degree to which we achieved our intended outcome. This is our evidence. Teachers and students and classroom observations reveal that teachers are implementing personalized instruction strategies. Then, was it implemented with fidelity? 30 of our 35 teachers scored X, Elliott observations showed that 30 to 35% of our teachers had no problem. We are going to continue to work with 5 teachers through instructional coaching. That's all you have to say. Then, because those 5 did not implement with fidelity, they didn't implement what they learned. They didn't meet the expectation of the professional development. Then you go to the last one, the summary of the influential factors. It might have been because they were new. One of them was on maternity leave. What were those factors that caused them not to implement as well? And you do that with each critical initiative. So for you guys, you're going to do this, but keep it focused. What was the critical initiative? What was our pre-data? What was our post-data? If you don't have pre-data, what do you need to do? You're going to carry over that critical initiative because the data you collected this year is now your baseline. Once you do that, for each critical initiative, we also had this conversation. Many of you say teacher surveys or student surveys as one of your measures. That survey data might be used for multiple critical initiatives. So for example, like on the Elliott data, you might have classroom observation. I showed you how to look just at those environments that have the elements of personalized learning, A, B, and E. But in another critical initiative, you might have had a need for other Elliott data. Does that make sense? So on a survey, for example, there's lots of questions asked, and they're very generic. But if I was talking about student surveys for personalized learning, on the inventories that I have on this guy right here, those inventories have questions like, my teacher helps me with my individual needs. I can just pull that data. I don't need the whole survey. I am measuring one specific thing. And then I would compare it to what the teachers say, because the teachers would say, I provide personalized learning or instruction for all of my students. And then you would pull that piece. Does that make sense? You don't have to use a key measure resource, data resource, in its entirety. Answer the question of, did you reach your intended outcome? That's the key. So if your person's responsible for each of the activities, or if you have a strategic team leader, if they come with all this data ready to go, you just have a conversation for each critical initiative. So for critical initiative number 1, what does the Elliott data say? Critical initiative number 4, what does the rest of the Elliott data say? You can pull that data right back because you're using it for multiple things. Make sense? How many of you are already thinking about how you're going to reconfigure your evaluation conversation? It's much easier this way. And thorough. Now, turn the page. Then you would do the next survey. You look at each of your critical initiatives for the year. Now you ask yourself these questions, and this helps with your summary. First question. Is our new current reality different from our then current reality? Explain. Let me give you a model. At this table, A critical initiative was to offer students tutoring in a Rocketeer tutoring program for reading and math. Their key measure data was to improve reading and math. Their reading and math improved, and they could put the degree to which. So, in this, let's just say all of their critical initiatives were like that. Would you say that your current reality now is different from your past current reality? Yes. You are at a better stage. Your students improved performance in reading and math. But you might add a question, while student performance improved or increased in both reading and math, there are other factors. Here's an example. There might be other factors that did not, because this was their objective, maximize student learning. It improved it. We will carry over this critical initiative. Because their objective, the big one, was to maximize student learning in reading and math. But they went from like a 30 to a 40 or a 50 to a 60, a 30 to a 60, which was great. Then, are there differences in what the institution expected to see? You could have done all of this work in professional learning because you want the instruction to improve. And it did. The instruction improved, but you also saw improved attendance and decreased discipline issues. We didn't expect to see that. That was happy. So was it what you expected to see? Yes, but we also saw this, or no, that's not what we expected to see, because sometimes our work does not give us our intended outcome. Did the institution faithfully execute the implementation plan? In some critical initiatives you might have, in some you might not have. In this example, they wanted small group instruction. They wanted to utilize small group instruction. Some teachers did. Some teachers did not. And there was maybe no change in student performance for those teachers. The question then becomes, do we keep it on the strategic plan? Two things, and this might be. Yes, but you might change the activities. So you don't have to provide professional learning to the whole staff. You're going to provide instructional coaching to the staff that did not do what they were supposed to. And you'll set expectations for them. In terms of the tutoring program, this is a great question, so I'm going to give it to you, Dr. Dana. If they saw improvement, market improvement, and they want to keep doing it, but now it's an embedded process of the school. If they want funding, do they have to keep it on their strategic plan?
Yes.
Okay, that answers the question. If it's a funding issue and you're using that, and when David talks about this towards the end of the day, then yes. But if what you did was successful, that doesn't mean you throw it away and you never do it again. So we have the Rocketeer tutoring program. It's successful. We're going to keep doing that because we saw improvements in student performance. But I already have it in my budget. I don't need money. I don't have to keep it on my strategic plan. Your strategic plan is for taking you from here to there. If it's already taking you there and it's in positive practice, you keep doing it. Does that make sense? There's a lot of people who will put things on their plan that say ongoing. Well, that muddies the waters because that puts more on paper for you to provide evidence for. If it's an embedded practice, you can let it go. It doesn't have to be on your plan. If it's an embedded practice, if you still have work to do, keep it on your plan and make those adjustments in your activities or the wording. All right, what's next on the judge the overall success? So these are guiding questions that you can use with your leadership team to help you. Once you do each critical initiative, then you do this. Then at the end, it just says, are there alternative descriptions, explanations for success or failure? And I hate the word failure, but you know what I mean. Describe the combined results in a holistic way that speak to the effectiveness. So here's an example of how you could start a summary of your overall success of the plan. Here at Anywhere School, we accomplished 3 of our 8 critical initiatives. 2, we made significant progress because we showed growth in student performance and teacher instruction in these 2 areas. We will continue to work on those. The other 3 will be adapted and readjusted, and we will add those to our plan for next year. Short and sweet. So if I'm a new principal, let's say you decide I've had enough of this, I'm retiring. So I'm the new principal and I come in. When I read your summary for each critical initiative and your overall summary, I'm going to have a very good idea without ever having to talk to you what happened and what was good and what was not. Because I'm going to include what I do on this worksheet as part of my summary. Does that make sense? So if you want to leave a legacy, be transparent and let people know what you're accomplishing or you're not. If your ESAs come in, they can access this. They can open your ACIP at any time and they'll see your summaries in there and they'll be like, man, these people. And if they just show up and say, I want to know what you accomplished, you say, give me 2 seconds. You open your ACIP and say, it's all right there. Enjoy. And that's nice because you've documented all of your work. Questions? And then notice the next page. So each critical initiative, overall plan, and you probably answered all of these questions in your discussions from the other 2 pages. So now, in the same sitting, if you want to be efficient, in the same sitting, you're like, all right, folks, we evaluated this year. Let's look at creating our ACIP for next year. It's right here. So you can have those discussions and assign someone, start putting it in the platform. It'll be ready by May 30th. We'll send it to our ESA and we can get started on July 1. Or whenever it is you return as principal. Notice the last question. What critical initiatives need to be carried over? Which ones need to be modified? Which ones need to be removed? And which ones need to be added? Now, for a couple of folks, we went into their platform and they noticed that they did not have intended outcomes or key measures. Let me show you where to see that. If you do not, then that's one of the things you're going to say you're going to do for next year, because that makes it a lot easier. Remember our navigation pane? When we are here under planning, it says create objectives and critical initiatives, identify outcomes and key measures. So when I am right here, provide professional development for personalized learning. I have these intended outcomes. Teachers easily implement professional learning strategies. Now I need to prove that they're doing that. How am I doing that? Inventories, engagement surveys. I could have done observations. Don't add key measures here. If these don't tell you what you need to know, what do you need to do? If you have the other data, I might go, oh, you know what? None of these are telling me what I need to know. I might need to look at Elliott data. But you will say that in your summary. Any questions? So if you don't have them here, when you look at identify outcomes and key measures, if you have access, go look at it right now. If it's not in there, then you're going to have a hard time evaluating. And if you did not get that intended outcome, do not throw it out. Just be transparent and change it for next year.
I have a question.
Sure.
You have teachers with easily. The word easily.
Oh, yeah. You can take that out.
Okay.
I was doing that as an example because my mindset was, it wasn't a contrived lesson. They were immediately attending. So I chose to put the word easily because I wanted them to practice over time. This wasn't the first time. This was actually the second iteration. The first one is that they would gain the knowledge. This was the next year's plan that they would easily implement. Does that make sense? So if you had the continuum, that's why you're seeing two different theories of action. But you're right. Make it measurable. Easily may not be measurable. Good point. Anybody else? All right. We're almost, let me see where we are. Wait, where'd I put my clicker? Oh, I'm by you. All right, that's the Padlet link that has these templates on there. Under evaluating, you will see these templates. And you see resources from each of the other phases. Plus you have tons of videos. If you are new to the ACIP process, make sure you do this. Before we move on, I want you all just to think for a few minutes, and you can jot it down on these papers right here. What will you do differently? Or what are your plans for evaluating, and what needs to change for next year when you're doing your next ACIP? So just jot down at least one thing. What are you going to do this year for evaluating and next year for ACIP? Real quick. If you're in the platform and you need help, I will come and show you how to get to where you need. No, that's okay, I'm just saying. So that's fine, but that's an activity measure. So you can go back, because sometimes the activities are just proof that you did something, whereas the critical initiative should show. Let me remind you too, do not try to evaluate every activity that you have in the implementing plan. That's what's done in your progress monitoring. Keep your evaluation at the critical initiative level, not the activity level. Because provide professional development includes selecting a date, who's the person, I can show that I did all of that all during the year. I want to know if it actually changed that intended outcome. Your activity measures don't necessarily have an intended outcome. All right, who wants to share what they will do with the evaluating phase? What is your plan? What are you going to do differently when you leave here? Or what are you going to do in general?
I'm going to add some more initiatives based on, what we have from this previous ACIP.
For next year?
For next year.
Okay, so for evaluating, what are you going to do differently?
I'm going to look at my data and see if we increase or decrease it. If we did, then I'll add another initiative. If we didn't, I have to keep that same.
Okay.
Can you repeat what she said? We can't hear over here.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No, I'll say it. So she said, for evaluating this year, she's making the connection of how to do from one year to the next. So she's gonna analyze the data, and if she met it, she will choose new critical initiatives. If she did not, she will carry them over. This is different from them because they didn't look from one year to the next, maybe. Okay, same for y'all? Perfect. Okay?
So I'm gonna actually meet with my leadership team and get them to help me to do this instead of trying to sit by myself in silo and complete this. So
If I had a door prize, I'd give it to her. She said, I'm going to have my leadership team principals. I thought it was hard to use the restroom as a teacher. You are running, you are doing things, you're putting out flyers, you're handling stuff. You can't do everything. Plus, it is our obligation to help leaders rise to the surface, and if we don't give them opportunities to do so, they will not. So I leave and everything goes to heck in a handbasket. Right? So, use your leadership teams. There are experts on your campuses. There's knowledgeable folks who want to analyze data, who want to make sense of why you do what you do in your schools every single day. Love it. Anybody else? Now, not only will her using her leadership team to evaluate help, what will that leadership team then do?
Take ownership.
Take ownership and create a plan for next year. And guess what those leadership team members do? When the teachers say, why are we doing this? And they'll say, because that data said. No, we have to make improvements. I've been that teacher before. Have you seen our scores lately? Nothing changed. All right. Wait. It's time for me to stop. It's my reminder. Where was I? Okay. So we judged the success of the annual plan. We did all of that. We addressed what's going to happen in the future. And notice that the image I have up here. We're looking through a much clearer lens once we evaluate. All right. Now, one more activity for today. I want you, there's another handout that says examining our strategic planning behaviors document. While you are here, how many of you do not use a leadership team? Okay. Next year, you're gonna identify them. And people say, who should be on the team? And my answer is yes. Who should be on the team? I picked a representative from each grade level, the curriculum person and instructional coach, the librarian. I even have the athletic director on my leadership team because they can often get students to do things that we can't. So whoever it is, and then you will assign roles, and you'll know what the roles will be when you do this guy. But I want you to go through the exercise of examining your leadership behaviors. You can self-assess. You're going to have 10 minutes. But if you notice the different categories, let's look at the 5 things. 1, effective strategic planning results in documents that are written for organizational focus. So that's your output. That's your ACIP. You're going to evaluate that. You're going to evaluate if your strategy is framed by a relevant mission and vision. If you haven't changed your vision and mission in a long time, might be time to address that. Effective strategic planning aids in managing improvement. If you say no to some of these indicators, then you're just compliance. We don't want to do compliance. I don't mind doing anything when I was in college or as a teacher or as a principal to the ESA. I will do whatever you say if it's meaningful for me. And even if it's not. But I never wanted to be that compliance person. Then number 4, effective strategic planning yields strategy that is adaptable to real world. Effective strategic planning yields documentation that is comprehensive enough to capture. So I want you to pick 1 through 5, and just complete that one. Because it's long and it's extensive. You're going to do it as a whole leadership team before. But pick one of those and look at those indicators. This is a guided reflection that are you doing work that's meaningful? There's 7 questions, I think, but you're only going to pick and evaluate 1 through 5. One of the ones, 1 through 5. to work on this. Anybody see one? Did anybody see one that says, man, we really do a good job? For those of you who do not have a leadership team, this will help in growing that leadership team and helping them to set some parameters about some of the stuff that should be accomplished in terms of improvement planning. This reflection sheet, examining our behaviors, outlines the behaviors that are desirable in a leadership team and the activities that should be done. We want to help you set the stage before October. All right? Any questions for me? I'm still here, but we're going to take it and send it over to Dr. Dana, and she's going to give you some more specific expectations in terms of ALSDE.
Okay, good after, well, still good morning.
Oh, I forgot to do the other thing, but we'll come back to it.
All right, we're still in good morning stage, so I am just really here to wrap up basically the funding side of everything Nicole said to you. When you go in and you look at your ACIPs and you're evaluating them, did it work? Yes, it worked so well, we need to continue. Did it not work? We need to cancel it. Nothing happened. The students actually did worse than what we initiated. Do we need to modify it? Well, it only worked with a certain group of students. It worked with the middle school, but it didn't really work with 4 and 5, grades 4 and 5. So we need to change that. So anytime there's a change in what you do, your initiatives, especially if it's tied to funding, you must change your ACIPs. And you must change federal programs directors. Where are you? Raise your hand. Wave it around. Be proud.
They don't want to say.
You don't want to say, right? Because you know it's work on you. But the point is, anytime your funding changes, that EGAP application, I mean, not the funding, anytime your ACIP changes, your EGAP application has to change. You get that carryover. You have to add carryover in there. And it has to match what's happening with the ACIP. Right? The principal says, we evaluated our ACIP, and we need to change some things around. We're not going to use this particular resource. We're going to use something different. You have to change that application. It's another reason why you're such an integral part of the ACIP process from beginning to end, because you have to do the application that comes to our office. Lucky you. So let's talk about what is allowed in school improvement. And I passed out, if you don't mind, this document. Now, this is for school improvement, correct? It says that up there. Allowable uses for school improvement. But this applies to all federal programs. I just have it on there when I just made copies of what I've issued out or distributed during school improvement sessions. But this applies to every federal dollar you get. So when you're reallocating funds, when you're adding carryover, it really doesn't change from the beginning to the end. We open up, we did our beginning of the year training and said, this is what's allowable. These are the allowable expenses. And they're the same at the end of the year. They don't change, okay? So yes, you can allocate funds for personnel, but the personnel has to do something. Please don't just hire somebody because you need an extra body in the building. Because when you evaluated that extra body in the building, did that directly impact student performance? Having someone else to do bus duty, does that directly impact student performance? No. No, not at all. So when you hire someone, that person's sole purpose should be impacting student performance. directly, not indirectly, okay? There's a difference. I'm gonna hire a parent liaison because I need help. My secretary needs help in the office with attendance. Yeah, no. That's not helping. Directly impacts student performance. But you hire that parent liaison to talk to these parents, go knock on some doors, bring that kid to school, figure out what resources in the community that child needs, to get them in the school, to help the home. Yes, that's directly impacting student performance. So again, be very careful when you hire personnel. That person has to support the students. Formative assessments. Funds can also be spent on this. But please remember, your formative assessments must align with the Alabama state standards, right? Because you know these vendors will sell you the world. They'll tell you anything. Verify. Most people say trust, but verify, don't trust. Just verify, okay? Because they're going to sell you and tell you whatever you need, and then you get it, and it's like, what happened? And then they want to add on and charge you extra for what you initially asked for. So please just verify that. Extended learning. This is something we see very little of in applications. You can use your funds for extended learning. Imagine the student's improvement if they have access to dual enrollment, career tech opportunities, advanced courses. You can use school improvement and any other federal fund, Title I particularly, to provide this for your students. Let's be honest. How many of you know you have students who can perform better but just don't because they're bored? I hear a lot of that. So imagine if you provide funding to challenge them, to give them the dual enrollment opportunities, STEM opportunities, career tech opportunities. Would they be more engaged and willing to participate in their own learning if they had more opportunities? Instructional resources. Now, please don't allocate funds for instructional resources for paper, pencils, globes. Who uses the globes in classrooms? Y'all remember those pull-down maps? You had to pull them down and unstay if you pulled it the right way. We're not buying those anymore. Can we please stop putting that on there? You know, we're talking about the future of learning. So if you're implementing a STEM program, yes, purchase the products you need to implement STEM. If you're implementing PBL, get those items you need. But just the basics, I mean, you can, but is that really impacting student performance? Paper, pencil? Is that helping the student perform better on the summative assessment? I don't know. Probably not. That's my guess. I've never seen paper and pencil help a student pass ACIP. PD. We talked about PD. We just went through analyzing a particular critical initiative on PD. If PD is in your application, it's in your ACIP, please remember it has to meet the definition, S's definition of PD. Sustained, intensive, collaborative, job-embedded, data-driven, and classroom focused. Okay? That doesn't mean it's a one and done, a sit and get. Whatever PD your teachers are going to, they must be transformed in the process. Because the problem is, they're doing what they've always done for the last 15, 20 years, and that's why we are in the position we're in today. PD has to be that thing that changes them. Kicking and screaming, but they're being changed. Right? Change is going to come. Bless you. So, please make sure any PD they go to is going to help them change. It's ongoing. It's not just a one-time thing they're coming to today and they'll never come to another session. It should be ongoing to keep that learning fresh and new. And then transportation. So if you're going to provide funding for dual enrollment, career tech, extended day, educational field trips, not going to Six Flags, educational field trips. You can
Wait a minute, we're studying dynamics of.
No, you're not.
They have a math
You don't
assignment.
have to go to Six Flags. Sorry, you do not need to go to Six
Well,
Flags
you
to
can write
study
it down.
gravity. Sorry. Okay, or whatever engineering word term that is. that I'm not using.
They have a math assignment.
That's right.
No. If you're studying Romeo and Juliet and it's being shown at Shakespeare, there's a play at Shakespeare, so the students can see a live interpretation of Romeo and Juliet, yes.
Boo.
That was one thing I love. But going to Six Flags tonight, you don't need to go to an amusement park to study all of that engineering stuff. Figure it out in the classroom. Sorry. Sorry, no. But yes, you can provide transportation for these items as well. There's public school choice on there. In the event you do spend your funds, you allocate your funds to send students to other places, other schools. But usually people don't do that, so we'll skip that. Also, when you are allocating funds, especially, well, actually all federal program dollars must be spent on evidence-based interventions. Every title program has to have evidence-based interventions. Title 1, Title 2, Title 3, Title 4, Title 5, student improvement, all have to have evidence-based interventions. For school improvement funds, you can only use these top 3 tiers. So as you're reallocating your funds, do not forget you need to ensure however you reallocate them, it meets one of the top 3 tiers. That's how it was in the beginning of the year. That's how it was in the middle of the year. That's how it is at the end of the year. It doesn't change. A lot of people try to change it and say, well, we had all this money left, and so we're trying to create a classroom where students can go in and, no. That classroom is not going to help students pass that ACIP test or the ACT. It's not. It has to be of direct service, directly impacting the student. When you get access to this, these are all hyperlinks, live and active hyperlinks. They take you to websites for you to do, well, the principals. The principals, where are you? Not the federal programs director. The principals go to these websites and find the evidence-based interventions needed to implement your activities, your initiatives. Why is that important? It's because evidence-based interventions have been researched. True research studies have been conducted on these particular interventions or programs, initiatives, and these research, the outcome of that research has been proven to work. It has been studied and proven that it is successful. So instead of trying to find if something that you already do is in here, scratch that and go search for something that will work. 9 times out of 10, and those at OSI, you know, principals are trying to go in and search and like, well, it's not evidence-based, but can we do it anyway? And your answer, AD, is going to be what? No. But we've been doing it. And that's why you're where you are. No. It's evidence-based. So it's time to, this is the perfect time, you're going through that evaluation stage. Look to see if it works. If it doesn't work, it's time to stop. Stop wasting money. Stop. Yes, it's gonna be a headache to train teachers next year or something new, yes it is. But you have to do what's best for who? The student. And if you lead with them in mind, you'll be okay.
Can you just speak to a minute? I know we've talked in the past about using funds for multiple years of implementation of services programs. Can you just speak to that for a minute?
Yes, because particularly, I know school improvement, Title I, these are annual, annual funding sources. So anything you purchase needs to be annual and not over an extended period of time. I've learned that. Yes, I was told that before, someone left off. But yes, I was told, yes, it's an annual funding source, and therefore, if it's an annual funding source, your contracts need to be annual. Any other questions? All right, and then again, making sure, federal programs directors, this goes back to you, making sure your ACIPs and EGAPs, your ACIPs and EGAP application matches. How many of you have had me tell you it doesn't match, they don't align, and I can't approve your application until they align? I go through every one, I promise you. I go through every ACIP, school improvement, ACIP, every EGAP application, and I match everything up to the T. That's my sole purpose. That's not my sole purpose. It's one of the many things I have to do. Takes a long time to do it for every LEA with CSI schools, but I do. Because funding cannot be spent on items that are not in the school improvement plan. School improvement funds are there to fund the school improvement plan. And if it's not in the plan, it can't be in the application. And what is your school improvement plan? What is the school improvement plan? ACIP, thank you. Yes, everything Nicole just talked about. And then for federal programs directors, please don't forget to complete the evaluation template. Making sure as you are completing these documents that Nicole has passed out as to whether or not something is going to be sustained, modified, added, deleted, that information will go on your evaluation template. Principals don't see this. This is what federal programs directors have to complete and upload in EGAP. So please make sure it's on there. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, if it worked or it didn't work, provide the explanation on here. The same information the principals are putting in their ACIP is the same information that's going to go on the evaluation template. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Hunt, you should be shaking. You have questions? No. Okay. All right, so as you can see in this particular example, because the last one, because 1 out of 4, you probably can't see this, but because 1 out of 4 positions were filled, and this was to hire teacher tutors, they decided, this LEA, to reallocate the funds for extended day. So if that is what happened, just put it in there. Let us know. We're not going to slap your hand or anything. We just need to know the truth. And that's all it is.
I have a question. If it's a retired teacher, right, does she have to be still certificated to work as part of the program? A retired teacher and out of the system, going to remain to help support teaching and learning.
Aren't they supposed to maintain their, they have to maintain their school.
So if one did not, they could not provide support.
We shouldn't do that.
Okay.
All right, that brings us to the end of our training.
I do want to go back. That's why I was waiting up here.
Okay.
Okay. So now you guys know how to, thank you. have gone through what you need to do to evaluate. Well, that you should evaluate. What you need to do, and you have some guided reflection to help you on that evaluation phase. Here's the last step that people rarely do. This right here. You've got to tell folks what you uncovered during the evaluating phase. That means you're going to tell your ESA people because they have to know. That's part of your obligation. But let your families know. She was talking about evidence. We did a research study, and our strategic thinking and planning process is now promising evidence for ESSA that we can improve student outcomes. When you engage in meaningful activity, it does improve. So we're not telling you this for busy work, but let folks know, we tried this. This was the outcome. So whether you're going to have, I used to do a state of the school address as a principal. I did a mid-year state of the school address, or mid-year updates, and then at the end of the year I did a state of the school address. I even had it filmed. We had our own little YouTube channel for the parents, and that was available to them. So they understood everything we had tried to accomplish for the year, what was successful, what wasn't, and what we would be doing for next year. It did not matter as much to them that we didn't accomplish things. What mattered was they knew that we were trying. That was the big thing, and that improved our culture so much. So you might want to have your leadership teams help you. Who's going to communicate that? How will it be communicated? Are you going to do a newsletter, an insert, a YouTube video? How often will you let folks know for next year? You should be letting them know what you're trying to do. And then some people had flyers or handouts and sent that to all the principals, whatever. So before you leave today, we're almost done. What are your considerations for next year? One, set on the calendar right now. I know your calendars are probably already approved. When will you and your leadership team be meeting to do your ACIP for next year? When will you do your mid-year review? And when will you do your end-of-year review? So those folks on your leadership teams, there's no surprise. If it's during a school day and you get someone to cover a classroom, that's fine. Provide them a meal. They will be very happy. Give them a gene day. They'll be even more happy. Goals and strategies. For your report card indicators, remember, if we don't want to give you extra things. If you've got accountability indicators, if you are a CSI, TSI, if you have something else, that can be your strategic themes. Work with what you have to work with as often as possible so it doesn't feel like it's more to do. What are your additional expectations and priorities for your schools? Make sure you have due dates. If you're going to pick a key measure, make sure somebody knows that they have to pull that data and bring it to the table. You want to make sure your evaluation is complete for this year, creates your ACIP for next year. And if you haven't done exploring the future yet, please, 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 please do that. We are doing lots of work with different folks around the state. If you want us to go to your district, we'd be happy to. Year of your cycle, if you're just doing updates, that's fine. Is it time for new work? Okay. Any thoughts, questions? We're 30 minutes ahead, and I didn't do an evaluation for today. I'll do that first. Any thoughts? Questions? We are finished early. I'm gonna be here for the afternoon session. So if you need specific help in the platform, I'm here for you. If you need specific help with leadership teams, I'm here for you. You just let me know. Oh, I will be putting this slide deck on that Padlet. So if you've already accessed the Padlet, it'll be on there. I meant to say that. Thank you for reminding me.